my friends. Happy Sunday. How are you? Doing well this week? I hope it was wonderful. All right, we are in week 2 of our series, The Miracles of Jesus. And so we're on week 2. If you missed week 1, what do? You go back to TVC Kids Nashville. That's our kids YouTube channel, and watch week 1. That was the first miracle that Jesus performed. So it was a good one. So go back if you haven't seen that one, but we are ready for week 2. And this miracle, I thought we needed to be outside. I thought I needed to have a little picnic. All right, so I will tell you, it's mid-January if you're watching this not for the first time, and it's a chilly picnic out here, but I love you, so we're going to have a picnic. And so I'm outside on my picnic blanket, ready to have a good time. So let's get into this picnic. Are you ready? So let's see what I have. Here's my basket. What could be in the basket? You know, I love to make a picnic. Do you guys take picnics? What do you put in your basket? Yeah? All right, I love to do all kinds of things. Uh-oh, there's no food in my picnic basket. What am I going to do? Well, I'm not going to do anything except for read to you and let you know what Jesus did. All right, here we go. From the Child's Story Bible by Catherine Voss. This one, I bet you know this story. 5 loaves of bread and 5,000 people. That's a really big picnic, right? All right, here we go. After a while, the 12 disciples, whom Jesus had sent out to preach in the villages, all came back. So this is a little further ahead than we were last week. We were just talking about Jesus gathering the disciples, right? There was just a few. He's just starting to gather. Now all 12 were with him. And he had sent them out to start teaching, right? Each one had told them what he had done, and the disciples, they were just kind of tired from their journeys. Do you ever get tired after doing something long? I will tell you, after teaching 2 services on Sundays, a lot of times I go home and take a nap. So that's what the disciples were doing. They were getting tired. They were ready to go and just rest somewhere. So Jesus said to them, "Come apart to a desert place, and we will rest for a while." And they all got in a boat and rowed to the other side of the lake. Should be great, right? No. The people guessed where they were going. Could you believe it? It was like they were following Jesus and following those disciples. They wanted to know, so they figured out where they were going. They ran as fast as they could around to the other end of the lake. When Jesus and his disciples reached the other side, there was a great crowd of people waiting for them there. So they thought they were going to get away and just rest. All right, now I know this happens with your mom. Does this ever happen where your mom says, "I'm just going to go rest for a minute," and she goes to one part of the house and then all of a sudden all the kids are there? Yeah, that's what happened with Jesus too, all right? He said, "I'm just going to rest. My disciples, we're going to all rest for a little bit," and all the people showed up. Jesus felt a little sorry for the people because they were like sheep who had no shepherd. They were just following, and they wanted to learn so much. But there was no one but Jesus there to teach them. So he talked to them all afternoon. All right. So he was tired. The disciples were tired, but he's like, you know what? These people, they want to learn. They want to learn more about God. And so I'm going to teach them. And so they spent all afternoon teaching and talking. By and by, the sun began to sink, as it does, into the sky, and evening came. The people had been listening to Jesus all afternoon. They were a good crowd, weren't they? They were good students. They really wanted to hear. Now it was time for supper, and they had nothing to eat, just like me with the empty picnic basket, nothing to eat. In their hurry to run after Jesus, they'd forgotten to bring any food with them, so they didn't even bring a basket. All right? All they thought about was, Jesus is going that way, we're going that way. And so they were there with no food. Now Jesus, he knows everything, and he knew that the people who had been listening to him were tired and hungry. And so he turned to Philip and he said, "Where can we buy enough food for a crowd as big as this?" Well, Philip, he said, if we gathered all the disciples together, we wouldn't have enough money to feed all these people. Jesus knew this too. Even if we had the big sum, where could we get that big of a supper? Each one would only get a tiny piece. All of the disciples had been with Jesus a very long time then, and they'd seen him do other miracles. They still didn't understand there was nothing he could not do. So he could do anything, right? And they were like, what are we going to do? They were still worrying, weren't they? Even after seeing miracles before. And they said, should we send them away? They're asking Jesus, should we just send them away? Should we just send them out to villages, send them out to places to go? Here's what Jesus said. Remember this. You give them something to eat. Uh-oh. The disciples were like, wait, there's 12 of us. We don't have any food. We don't have much money. What are we going to do? How can we do this? And then Jesus told them this little story. He said, there's a boy, and he's got 5 barley loaves of bread and 2 fish. Andrew said, but what would that be among so many people? All right, so I don't know how you guys are on math, but math is not my best subject, and I still use my fingers sometimes to count. Do you guys do that, to do math? All right, so let's do 5. That's 5 little loaves of bread, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 2 fish. All right, how many people do you think they were there? Keep those hands ready. All right. Tell the people, this is Jesus talking, tell the people to sit down in groups in the grass, just like I am. And soon all the people were seated in the soft green grass, and they were wondering what the teacher, Jesus, was going to do next. Most of them were men, but there were also a great number of women and children with them. The members of each family sat together, just like if you went on a picnic. Everybody sat together on their little blankets, probably. They sat together. The members of each family sat together. When everyone was seated down, and it was easy for them to count, and they counted groups in 50 or 100, and they were, how many, do you guys know? 5,000. All right, let's bring your hands back out. Let's see if we could count to 5,000. Let's go by tens, okay? Here we go. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. There's 100. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. That's 200. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. That's 300. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. That's 400. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. That's 500. We're talking 5,000. And I will tell you, in those times, most of the time, they only counted the men. And so there were women and children there too, right? Well, we don't have enough time in this video for me to count by tens to 5,000. But you guys get the idea, right? That was a lot of people. And how many loaves of bread did they have? 5 little loaves of bread. And how many fish did they have? 2. All right, so go from 5 and 2 to 5,000. What are they going to do? Let's see what Jesus does next. Jesus took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. Looking up to heaven, he thanked God for the food. All right, so the first thing he did was take this tiny amount of food and thank God for it. Awesome, right? Just like you do every meal, right? But Jesus, he was talking to his Father, and he just thanked God for this tiny bit of food. Then he broke the 5 little loaves into pieces. He gave them to the disciples, and they gave them to the people. So he asked the disciples to go and serve. Jesus did the same with the fish. He broke it and gave it to the disciples to serve. The disciples put the pieces into baskets and passed them to the people so that everyone could take, listen to this, everyone could take as much as they wanted. No matter how much was taken out of the baskets, there was always plenty left. No matter how much they took out, there was still some left. The people seated at the outside of the edges were probably, think about the guys in the back seats, right? They're thinking, oh, I wonder, is there going to be enough for me? Will there be food for me by the time those baskets make it through all these people? But there was enough. Indeed, there was more than enough. After the meal, Jesus told his disciples to gather up all the pieces that were left over so that nothing could be wasted. The disciples collected all the food. I love this part. There were 12 baskets of food left over. How many disciples were there? 12. And there was 12 baskets of food left over when they only started with 5 loaves and 2 fish, right? And now they have 12 baskets still full of food. There was more than enough, more than there was at the beginning. The people began to talk excitedly about each other. This is certainly the prophet who has been promised for many hundreds of years. Remember, these people had been talking, and they knew who was that prophet that sent the message that there would be a Savior coming. Remember Isaiah, right? We talk about that at Christmas. They knew there was a Savior coming, and they were seeing these miracles, and they were listening to this teaching. And here's what they said. We have heard his teaching. We have seen his wonderful miracles. He must be the Savior. And he is. He was in that day, and he is our Savior. All right, you guys, I hope you have learned a little bit more about that miracle. Let's talk about a few questions. How many fish were there? 2 fish, 5 loaves of bread. How many people? Over 5,000 people. What were they going to do? God thanked God first. Jesus thanked God first for that bread and all that he had. There was 12 baskets left over. He provided for all those people. Can he provide for you? Think about this week. Can Jesus provide for your needs? Their need in that moment was food. What is your need? What is it that you need Jesus to help you with? Do what he did. Thank God first. And then talk to him. Spend some time with him this week, you guys. I hope that you will see that Jesus is there for you to meet your every need. All right, you guys, I love you. And I'll be back next week with another miracle. So stay in tune, look back on these messages, and I'll see you next week. Love ya. Bye-bye.